Back in 2005, my wife and I consciously chose Salt Spring Island as our dream retirement destination. And we came here from Serbia, Montenegro, of all places. We retired there from my 35-year career in the Canadian diplomatic service, and we came to the Gulf Islands. And I'll tell you what drew us to the Gulf Islands. It's first and foremost, it's very rural. It's not urban. Secondly, it has a dream scenery. Thirdly, it has the mildest climate in Canada. It has a very rich culture and a very rich culture of volunteerism. There are no parking meters. There are no stoplights. There are no big box stores. And it has virtually every community amenity that I could dream of except a curling rink. I think that the Islands Trust has played a very major and central role in creating the kind of community that we all enjoy. The Preserve and Protect mandate of the Islands Trust has been very, very important in shaping our community. I believe that the decision in 1974, which was an all-party decision to create the Islands Trust, was central to that process, and I think it was brilliantly conceived. The decision by Victoria to separate the powers of land planning on the one hand with the Islands Trust and the provision of community services and infrastructure through the CRD divided those decisions, and it means that decisions by the Trust on land planning are not driven by a need to generate ever more revenue. So what would happen if Salt Spring incorporated? I think the first thing that would be very likely to happen is that taxes would go up significantly. A municipal council would have to find increased revenue somewhere to pay for the various costs that will shift from the province onto the shoulders of the Salt Spring taxpayer. Costs related to roads, costs related to policing, costs related to a new town hall or a roads works yard, and costs related to hiring all the municipal staff that would be needed to run everything. Mentioning the cost of roads, we have a very aging and underserviced road network, rather poorly maintained. And Salt Spring has approximately 265 kilometers of roads for a population of 10,500. That compares to Victoria, which has fewer roads than Salt Spring, believe it or not, 260 kilometers of roads, with a population of 85,000 people to pay for it. In fact, we have more roads, more kilometers of roads per capita, almost 2.5 times more kilometers of roads per capita than any other comparable small community in British Columbia. And I mean, clearly, I think the costs of maintaining and upgrading that very extensive road network would be simply too much for a small community like Salt Spring to bear. We know from the Urban Systems Consultants report that the cost of policing would triple. We're now paying about $400,000 a year towards the cost of the RCMP detachment on Salt Spring. The consultants have reported that under a municipality where we would have to absorb 100% of that burden, the cost to the Salt Spring taxpayer would rise to $1.2 million. So the municipality would be faced with a fairly stark choice. Where would they obtain the revenue to pay the additional costs? And they would have perhaps three options. Number one, they could increase our taxes. Number two, they could reduce services. Or number three, they could facilitate increased development on Salt Spring in the belief that more development brings more taxation revenue. But that's a very slippery slope. And if a town council decided to go down that slope, what would the impact be on the quality, our quality of life here on Salt Spring? What would the impact be on our roads? What would the impact be on parking downtown in Ganges that some people like to complain about even today? What would the impact be on our water resources? What would the impact be on our hospital? What would the impact be on the environment? And basically, what would the impact be on our quality of life on Salt Spring? It's a difficult choice, but it's an inevitable choice that a new town council would have to make if the decision was taken to incorporate. Now, I'm not instinctively against higher taxes. We need revenue to pay for services. We need revenue to pay for infrastructure. But what does deeply concern me is if we go down, almost inevitably go down the development route, which has plagued small communities and larger communities all across Canada, which now reflect urban development, ever more suburbs and ever more sprawl. That's not why I came to Salt Spring, and that's not what brought most of us to Salt Spring, and that's not what we love about Salt Spring. So I think the choice of higher taxes, reduced services, or increased development, there's nothing win-win about that choice. It rather sounds to me more like a lose-lose. So for me, the best path to a sustainable future on Salt Spring begins with a no vote on September the 9th.